My mom's tearful calls for grocery money were a regular thing. I always helped, never questioned it. Until one day, a wrong number text led me to a discovery that shattered everything. My name is Ethan, and if you were to ask anyone who knows me, they'd probably describe me as reliable, maybe a little too much so. I've always been the kind of guy who tries to do the right thing, especially when it comes to family. My parents, bless their hearts, haven't always had it easy financially. There were ups and downs over the years, and I've always been there to lend a hand whenever they needed it. It's just what you do, right? You look out for your family. For the past few years, the downs seemed to be happening more frequently. My mom would call, her voice tight with worry, talking about overdue bills, a broken appliance, or needing extra money for groceries. It wasn't every month, but it was often enough that I'd adjusted my budget to accommodate. I work as a software developer, a decent job that allows me to live comfortably, and honestly, it felt good to be able to help them out. My older sister, Sarah, well, she's always been a bit different. Let's just say she hasn't exactly followed a traditional career path, and financial stability isn't her strong suit. So, the responsibility of helping our parents often fell to me. One Tuesday morning, I was grabbing my usual coffee before heading into the office. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mom. "Ethan, honey, could you possibly send over a little extra this week? The fridge decided to give up on us, and we're scrambling to replace it. Anything you can spare would be a huge help. Love you." I sighed, but not in annoyance, more in that familiar, here we go again kind of way. Of course, the fridge. Just last month, it was a problem with the washing machine. Before that, it was a hefty, unexpected car repair bill. I told myself it was just bad luck, that things would eventually get better for them. "Sure, Mom. I can send something over later today," I texted back, adding a heart emoji to soften the financial blow I knew they were feeling. Later that afternoon, after a particularly grueling coding session, I remembered my promise. I pulled up my banking app and initiated a transfer of $500 to my parents' account. It was more than I usually sent for groceries, but a new fridge wasn't cheap. As I was about to close the app, another text message popped up. This time, it wasn't from my mom's usual number. It was an unknown number. The text read, "Did you remember to pick up the prosciutto and the truffle oil from that fancy market near the Duomo? Nana will be so disappointed if we don't have them for dinner tonight. Can't wait to see you both. XOXO. I frowned. Prosciutto? Truffle oil? Nana? This was definitely not meant for me. I checked the number again, making sure I hadn't somehow misread it. Nope, it was a completely unfamiliar number. My first thought was that it was a wrong number, someone texting the wrong contact. I was about to delete it when another text came through from the same number. "Oh, and Marco said the new outdoor furniture for the terrace arrived. He's setting it up now. Apparently, it's even more beautiful in person. So excited for our aperitivo overlooking the Tuscan hills." My eyebrows shot up. Terrace? Tuscan hills? This was getting weird. My parents lived in a small, slightly run-down house in a quiet suburb of Chicago. They didn't have a terrace, let alone one overlooking the Tuscan hills. And who was Marco? And Nana? A strange feeling started to bubble up in my stomach. It was a mix of confusion and a growing sense of unease. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was Sarah. She was always getting into some kind of adventure, and maybe she'd gone to Italy and gotten a new phone number without telling me. But the mention of Nana didn't fit. Our grandmother had passed away years ago. Curiosity, or maybe it was something darker, got the better of me. I decided to reply to the text. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number. This is Ethan." A few seconds later, a reply came back. "Oh my goodness, so sorry. I must have typed it in wrong. My apologies, Ethan. Have a wonderful day." The conversation ended there, but the questions in my head didn't. The image of truffle oil and Tuscan hills kept replaying in my mind. It was so far removed from the reality of my parents' supposed financial struggles. The next day, the feeling of unease hadn't gone away. I found myself thinking about the texts throughout the day. The contrast between my mom's worried voice asking for money for a fridge and the casual mention of a terrace in Tuscany. It just didn't add up. That evening, I was scrolling through Facebook, something I rarely do, when I saw a post from Sarah. It was a picture of her, looking incredibly tan and relaxed, holding a glass of wine. The location tag said, Tuscany, Italy. My heart skipped a beat. I clicked on the picture and my jaw dropped. In the background, unmistakably, was a sprawling villa with a large terrace overlooking rolling hills bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. It looked exactly like the kind of place someone with new outdoor furniture would have. I felt a cold dread wash over me. Could it be? Was it possible that the texts weren't a wrong number after all? That they were meant for someone in my family? I clicked through Sarah's other recent posts. More pictures of the villa, of her and some older people I didn't recognize, laughing and enjoying lavish meals. One photo showed a beautifully plated dish with, I kid you not, a generous drizzle of truffle oil. My mind raced. My parents had mentioned Sarah was traveling a few weeks ago, something vague about visiting a friend in Europe. They hadn't given me any details, and I hadn't pressed. Sarah's travels were usually last-minute and vaguely defined. But this was different. This looked expensive. Very expensive. And the timing, it lined up perfectly with my mom's recent requests for money. A sickening realization began to dawn on me. Could my parents have been exaggerating their financial troubles? Could they have been using the money I sent to fund this luxurious trip for Sarah? I felt a wave of anger mixed with a deep sense of betrayal. I'd been working hard, sacrificing my own wants and needs to help them out, and all the while, were they living a secret life of luxury? I needed to know more. I started digging deeper, looking at older posts, trying to find any clues that might explain this. I remembered a conversation I'd had with my mom a few months ago. She'd mentioned an old family friend, a woman named Eleonora, who lived in Italy and had invited them for a visit. At the time, it sounded like a modest invitation, maybe a week or two staying in a spare room. But this villa, this was far beyond a spare room. I found a picture of Sarah with an older woman who looked vaguely familiar. The caption read, "So grateful for Nana Eleonora's incredible hospitality. We're having the most amazing time in Italy." Nana. Clicked. The Nana from the text message. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a short visit. This looked like an extended stay, a lavish vacation that my parents were somehow involved in. And the money I'd been sending. I pulled up my bank statements. Over the past 6 months, I'd sent my parents a total of $3,800. That was a significant chunk of my savings, money I'd been putting aside for a down payment on a new car. The more I looked, the more suspicious things seemed. There were small, almost insignificant details I'd overlooked at the time. My mom mentioning a new friend who had connections in the travel industry. My dad suddenly being very vague about their expenses. Sarah's unusually cheerful demeanor in her recent phone calls. It all started to fit together, forming a picture I didn't want to believe was real. They hadn't just needed help with bills. They had been funding a luxury lifestyle, and I had been their unwitting ATM. The thought made my stomach churn. I felt like a fool, like I'd been played. The people I trusted most, the people I'd always put first, had seemingly been taking advantage of my generosity. I picked up my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through my contacts. I needed to talk to them. I needed answers. But a part of me was terrified of what I might hear. The image of that Tuscan villa, the truffle oil, the new outdoor furniture. It was all screaming a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The phone rang several times before my mom finally answered. Her voice was its usual warm tone. "Hi, honey. How are you?" "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw Sarah's pictures on Facebook, the ones from Italy." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, a silence that felt heavy with unspoken words. "Oh, yes," she said finally, her tone a little too casual. "She's having a lovely time." Lovely is an understatement, Mom. That villa looks incredible. "Who is Eleonora?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant, like I was just making conversation. "Oh, she's an old family friend. Very kind to invite Sarah to stay." "And you and Dad?" I pressed. "Are you there too?" Another pause. "Well, yes, we are. We decided to join her for a bit." It was a last-minute thing. A last-minute thing that required you to ask me for money for a new fridge? The words came out sharper than I intended. I could hear my mom sigh on the other end. Ethan, please don't make a big deal out of this. We just didn't want to worry you. Worry me? Mom, I've been sending you money for months because you said you were struggling. Overdue bills, broken appliances, needing help with groceries. And all this time, you've been vacationing in a luxury villa in Italy. My voice was rising now, the anger starting to boil over. It's not like that, Ethan, she said quickly. Eleonora is very generous. We're not paying for everything. But you're still there, aren't you? Enjoying a vacation that I've unknowingly been helping to fund. The line went silent again. I could practically feel the tension radiating through the phone. Ethan, she said finally, her voice softer now, almost pleading. We can explain everything. Can you just calm down? Calm down? Mom, I feel like I've been living in a completely different reality than you have. While I've been scrimping and saving, working extra hours to make sure you're okay, you've been living it up in Italy, and you lied to me about it. We didn't exactly lie, she protested weakly. We just didn't tell you the whole story. There's a difference, Mom. A big difference. I could hear my dad's voice in the background, muffled but distinct. What's going on? It's Ethan, my mom replied, her voice strained. He saw the pictures. My dad came on the line. Ethan, son, what's the problem? His tone was firm, the tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. The problem, Dad, is that I feel like an idiot. I've been sending you money, believing you were struggling, while you were apparently living the high life in Italy. And you didn't think to tell me? Not even a hint. Now, hold on a minute, he said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. It's not as simple as it looks. Oh, really? Then please enlighten me. Explain to me how needing money for a fridge translates to a luxury vacation in Tuscany. He hesitated for a moment. Well, Eleonora insisted. She's very wealthy, and she really wanted us to come. It was a good opportunity for Sarah to get away for a while, and we didn't want to leave her here alone. So, you decided to bring her to a luxury villa in Italy and let me foot the bill for your struggles back home? We were going to pay you back, Ethan. My mom interjected, her voice sounding fragile. As soon as we got home. When were you planning on telling me about this? After you got back? After I'd sent you more money for the next emergency? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. It spoke volumes. I don't know what to say, my dad admitted finally, his voice sounding defeated. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to deceive me, I said, the anger and hurt mixing into a bitter cocktail. I need some time to process this. Ethan, please. My mom started, but I cut her off. I'll talk to you later, I said, and hung up the phone. I stared at my phone for a long moment, the reality of the situation sinking in. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I ever would have imagined. I had always believed in my family, always trusted them. And now I wasn't so sure. The image of that Tuscan villa flashed in my mind again. A symbol of the lie they had been living. A lie that had been funded by my hard work and my willingness to help. I had so many questions, so many feelings swirling inside me. But one thing was clear. Things would never be the same again. The next few days were a blur. Sleep didn't come easy, my mind replaying the phone conversation over and over again. The casual way my parents had dismissed my concerns, the flimsy excuses, the complete lack of remorse. It all felt like a slap in the face. I found myself constantly checking Sarah's social media, each new picture from Italy twisting the knife a little further. They were having such a wonderful time, completely carefree, while I was back home, working my tail off and feeling like a complete fool. I talked to Anna about it, of course. She's always been my rock, the voice of reason when my emotions get the better of me. She listened patiently as I recounted the phone call, the shock of the discovery, the overwhelming sense of betrayal. Ethan, honey, she said gently, holding my hand. I'm so sorry. That's really awful. I just don't understand it. Anna? I said, my voice thick with emotion. How could they do this? How could they lie to me like that? Maybe they felt like they had a good reason, she offered tentatively. What reason could possibly justify this? I asked, my voice rising. Telling me you need money for groceries when you're sipping wine in Tuscany? That's not just a little white lie, Anna. That's blatant deception. Anna nodded slowly. I know. It's not right. But maybe they were embarrassed? Maybe they didn't want you to worry about them? Worry about them? I scoffed. They've had me worried sick for months. That's why I've been sending them money. And all along, they were living a lie. We talked for hours that night. Anna helped me process my anger and hurt, reminding me that their actions were a reflection of their character, not mine. But it was hard to shake the feeling of being completely taken for granted. A few days later, I received another text message from my mom. This time, it was her usual number. Ethan, honey, can we talk? I know you're upset, and we really want to explain things. I hesitated for a long time before replying. A part of me just wanted to ignore them, to cut them out of my life completely. But another part of me, the part that still held on to the idea of family, felt like I owed it to myself to hear what they had to say, even if I didn't believe a word of it. Fine, I texted back. But I want the truth, the whole truth. A few hours later, my parents were standing on my doorstep, looking sheepish and uncomfortable. Sarah wasn't with them, which I found a little odd, but I didn't mention it. I ushered them inside, my apartment feeling small and tense with their presence. We sat down in the living room, an awkward silence hanging in the air. My dad cleared his throat. Ethan, we're really sorry if we hurt you. If? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. You lied to me for months. You used my money to fund a luxury vacation. How can you say, if you hurt me? My mom's eyes welled up with tears. We didn't mean to hurt you, honey. Things got a little complicated. Complicated how? I pressed. My dad sighed. Well, Eleonora, she's been a very good friend to us over the years. She's always been very generous. She invited Sarah to come stay with her in Italy, and we couldn't let her go alone. So you both decided to tag along to her luxury villa? It wasn't our idea, my mom said quickly. Eleonora insisted. She said she had plenty of room and she'd love to have us all. And what about the money you asked me for? The fridge? The other emergencies? My parents exchanged a nervous glance. My dad spoke first. Well, the fridge was actually on its last legs. We did need to replace it. And the other times? My mom looked down at her hands. Sometimes things were a little tighter than we let on. But we were always planning on paying you back, Ethan. We promise. When? I asked, my voice flat. When were you planning on telling me about the villa? About Eleonora's generosity? They didn't answer. The silence in the room was thick with their unspoken admission of guilt. And Sarah? I asked, turning my attention to my sister. Was she in on this too? She knew about Eleonora's invitation, yes? My mom said softly. But she didn't know about us asking you for extra money. I found that hard to believe. Sarah had never been particularly financially savvy. The idea that she wouldn't have questioned how my parents were suddenly able to afford a trip to Italy, let alone an extended stay in a luxury villa, seemed far-fetched. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly, trying to piece everything together. Eleonora, this incredibly wealthy family friend you've never mentioned before, invites Sarah to stay in her villa in Italy. You both decide to go with her, and while you're there, you're still asking me for money for made-up emergencies back home. My parents remained silent, their heads bowed. Their silence was all the confirmation I needed. And the text messages? I asked. The ones about the prosciutto and the truffle oil? The new outdoor furniture? Those weren't a wrong number, were they? My mom's face flushed. No, honey, that was meant for Sarah. So, you were all living this amazing life in Italy, funded at least in part by my money, and you didn't think I deserved to know? We just didn't want you to worry, my dad repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Worry? I scoffed. You weren't worried about me, about the sacrifices I was making to help you. You were worried about me finding out the truth. The anger I had been trying to suppress finally boiled over. This isn't just about the money, Mom, Dad. It's about the lies. It's about the betrayal. I trusted you. I always thought we were a family who looked out for each other. But apparently that only goes one way. Tears streamed down my mom's face. Oh, Ethan, please, don't say that. We do love you. Love, I repeated, the word feeling hollow and meaningless in my mouth. Is that what you call this? Using me? Lying to me? Making me feel like I have to constantly bail you out while you're secretly living a life of luxury? My dad finally looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. We were just trying to give Sarah a break, Ethan. She's been having a hard time lately. And what about me, Dad? Haven't I been working hard? Haven't I been there for you whenever you needed me? Don't I deserve a break too? He didn't answer. He couldn't, because he knew I was right. The conversation went on for a while longer, but it was mostly just them trying to justify their actions, offering weak excuses and empty promises. I listened, but my heart wasn't in it. The trust was broken, and I didn't see how it could ever be fully repaired. Finally, I stood up. I think it's time for you to go, I said, my voice tired. My parents looked at me, their faces etched with worry. Ethan, what are you going to do? My mom asked. I don't know, I admitted. I need some space. I need to think about everything. They left, the silence in my apartment feeling heavier than ever. I sat down on the couch, the weight of their deception pressing down on me. I felt drained, emotionally and mentally exhausted. Over the next few weeks, I did a lot of soul-searching. I thought about my relationship with my parents, about the dynamic that had always existed between us. I realized that this wasn't an isolated incident. There had been other times, smaller instances of manipulation and guilt-tripping that I had brushed off or ignored. This trip to Italy, this elaborate lie, was just the culmination of a pattern that had been going on for years. I also thought about Sarah. While I was angry at my parents, I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for her too. She had always been the favored child, the one they made excuses for, the one they bailed out of every mess. Maybe she was just as much a victim of their enabling behavior as I was of their manipulation. I decided I couldn't continue to enable their lifestyle. I couldn't keep being their personal ATM while they lived a secret life and lied to my face. It wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't helping them in the long run. I made a difficult decision. I decided to cut off all financial support to my parents. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, and it came with a heavy dose of guilt. But I knew it was the right thing to do for my own well-being. I sent them an email, laying out my feelings and explaining my decision. I told them that I loved them, but I couldn't continue to support them financially when they weren't being honest with me. I told them they needed to find a way to manage their own finances and that I needed to focus on my own future. The response was immediate and exactly what I expected. My mom called, her voice filled with tears and accusations. My dad sent a long, guilt-ridden email about how I was abandoning my family in their time of need. Even Sarah chimed in with a few passive-aggressive texts about how selfish I was being. I stood my ground. I didn't engage in long arguments or try to defend my decision. I simply reiterated that I needed to prioritize my own life and that I wouldn't be sending any more money. The silence that followed was deafening. It was a silence that spoke volumes about the true nature of our relationship. It had always been based on my financial support, and now that that was gone, there wasn't much left. A few months passed. I heard through the grapevine that my parents had returned from Italy, their extended vacation apparently cut short. Sarah had moved back home, and things were reportedly tense. I didn't reach out, and they didn't try to contact me. It was a strange and unsettling feeling, this distance that had grown between us. Then, one evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Sarah. "Ethan, can we talk?" The text read. I hesitated for a moment, then replied, "What about?" "It's about Mom and Dad. And everything." We agreed to meet for coffee the next day. I hadn't seen Sarah in months, and I was curious to hear what she had to say. When I saw her at the coffee shop, she looked different. Gone was the carefree vacation glow. She looked tired, almost defeated. "Thanks for meeting me, Ethan," she said, her voice subdued. "What's going on, Sarah?" I asked, getting straight to the point. She sighed. Things haven't been great since they got back from Italy. Eleonora, well, it turns out her generosity had its limits. She basically told them it was time for them to leave. So, their free vacation came to an end? Sarah nodded. Yeah, and now they're back home, and, well, they're struggling. For real this time. "And what about you?" I asked. "I'm back home too," she said, looking down at her hands. "I haven't been able to find a job." "So, you're all living together again?" "Yeah," she said with a sigh. It's not easy. Mom and Dad are constantly fighting, and they're both really stressed about money." "And that's why you wanted to talk to me?" Sarah finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine. "Ethan, I know what they did wasn't right. Lying to you, using your money. It was messed up." I was surprised by her honesty. It was the first time anyone in my family had actually acknowledged the wrongfulness of their actions. "It hurt, Sarah," I admitted. "It really hurt." "I know," she said softly. "And I'm sorry, for my part in it too. I should have said something. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to rock the boat." "So, what do you want from me, Sarah?" I asked, my voice wary. "I know you cut them off financially, and honestly, I don't blame you. But they're really in a bad place, Ethan. They don't know what to do. And you think I do?" "No," she said quickly. "But I thought, maybe we could figure something out together? Maybe we could help them, but in a way that's fair to everyone." I thought about it for a long moment. A part of me still felt angry and resentful. But seeing Sarah's genuine remorse, hearing about their struggles, it tugged at something inside me. They were still my family, after all. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Sarah's face brightened slightly. "Well, I was thinking maybe we could help them create a budget, find ways to cut back. And maybe, just maybe, we could offer some limited, temporary support, but with clear boundaries and expectations." I considered her suggestion. It wasn't the easy, unconditional support I had provided in the past. It was a more structured approach, one that held them accountable. "I'm willing to talk about it," I said finally. "But things have to change. There can't be any more lies, any more manipulation. And we need to be a team in this, Sarah. You need to be honest with me, and you need to be willing to take responsibility too." Sarah nodded eagerly. "I promise, Ethan. I really do." We talked for another hour, hashing out a tentative plan. It wasn't a quick fix, and I knew there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild our family, based on honesty and mutual respect, rather than lies and financial exploitation. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was willing to take the first step. I had learned a valuable lesson. Family is important, but so is self-respect. And sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately lead to the greatest healing.